Welcome back to Bio Insights. We have today joining us again to the podcast. We have the head of business for VentriJect, Peter, a commercial leader really for the industry. We've in our last podcast, if you haven't heard of it, I'll put it in the show notes. But I wanted to invite him back because the topic of cardiorespiratory fitness and accessibility and actionable information really is critical, and what we're seeing more and more adopted mainstream across clinics, health clubs, and corporate and wellness programs. We're going to dig into that. We're going to dig into the accuracy, the reliability, how he's been distributing this to the market, some use cases, what I refer to as a playbook. So we're going to kind of talk about that concept. If I was going to pilot this, how am I going to deploy this? And then how to integrate VO2 max for health services so patients and most importantly, the members not only test, but also baseline their health, and what gets measured gets done. We were just having a chat before this. So welcome back to Bio Insights, Peter.
Thanks, Marcelo.
Thank you. To kind of get us started, why don't let's talk about this scaling concept of, the product itself, the form factors. People should just see it's really a small device. It is not a traditional type of heart rate monitor. Basically, this is all you need. It takes about 3 minutes to be able to implement this, and you're getting data back. So to get us started, how are your clinicians using this? How are your business owners and operators, corporate wellness operators using this right now?
Yeah, thank you very much, Marcelo. And I think it's an excellent question to get us started because, as you just showed, the device is very small. We are a hardware-enabled software company. So this tiny sensor you just showed there on screen is basically a sensitive accelerometer that measures the vibrations here in the chest wall, and we can get a little bit more back to seismocardiography during the course of today's podcast. But really what Seismo Fit offers in this tiny package and in just 3 minutes without the use of exercise is that it's becoming a lot more accessible to achieve an accurate measure of VO2 max. This is what clinicians and operators are really appreciating because for the first time, they can bring VO2 max estimation to the person being measured rather than the old way where people had to come to a central facility to do a CPET with, the bike test or treadmill with the gas exhaust mask on. So this changes the whole dynamic and makes it a lot easier. And this goes really well with one of these, let's call them mega trends at the moment, where VO2 max is becoming an increasingly interesting biomarker that more and more people are wanting to know, wanting to track. And Seismo Fit just caters really well by enabling many more operators, small and large, to offer such a metric to a growing population who are interested in this.
So it's as simple as taking that adhesive, placing it on the sternum of the chest and placing the sensor on, right? And then opening your app and deploying that. So that's the kind of the demo flow. So who's ever listening here or whoever seeing it, you can see that this is real simple. What are some clinical literacies that I think people should be aware of, and maybe some objections that you've encountered when you're dealing with that population set?
Yeah, obviously, we work a lot with clinicians and medical professionals, and it is in their training to be critical. What is this, and how can you measure something as VO2 max, which is the maximal oxygen uptake capacity, when people are lying still in a horizontal position? How is that possible? So obviously, this is the question that we are met with the most frequently. And to answer that, we have invested a lot of resources in our 7 years as a company to obtain clinical evidence and working with scientists to deliver peer-reviewed publications. Back here in May of 2025, We had our latest peer-reviewed article published in Nature. And again, as we have seen across the many publications that we've done and are all, by the way, available in our website, we really take pride in being transparent with our performance, our accuracy. And the results that we see across the board is an error rate of around 9% from our algorithm when it estimates VO2 max compared to a CPET result. It's also important in that context to remember that there are also variations in CPET or an error rate within CPET, because even CPET being the gold standard also has its limitations. It's hard to recreate the exact same environment as last time. So if the same person, me, were to take two CPETs closely relation, then it's not likely that it would be exactly the same VO2 max value, because I might have eaten differently, I might have slept differently, I might not, just not in the zone or really in the zone. And therefore, what we can see with CPET in the results that we, research that we do together with universities across the world, is CPET has an error rate of around 6% compared to ours 8-9%.
So it's interesting because that is something that I've often talked to sports physiologists. I've implemented various different types of metabolic flow chart assessments into my years of experience and working with wearable device manufacturers and using it to measure athletes. And you bring up a good point, because the cadence of those measurements, along with there's multiple factorial issues when you're implementing a test protocol. So it comes down to, really all data is meaningful data, provided that it is, you have some validation, in my opinion. There's some accuracy behind it. There's some reliability, that's the first step. And then being able to retest this value and then having the intervention in between is really the value here. From a reporting standpoint in-app, can you share with us a little bit about what that looks like and how does that work with a clinician or with a fitness professional?
Yeah, absolutely. The operation of our device is, as you also presented before, with the double adhesive. The sensor is put onto sternum. The person lays down in a horizontal position, and via the app, which is available both in App Store and Google Play Store for all Android devices, you log in and you just type in 4 biomarkers. So it's height, weight, age, and gender. And then you press recording the seismocardiogram. It records for 40 seconds. This data, the seismocardiogram and the 4 biomarkers, are all uploaded to the cloud immediately via Wi-Fi or mobile internet. And within less than a minute, the result is downloaded straight onto the app and displayed your VO2 max value. This is fast and seamless and makes VentriJect, the Seismo Fit app, very useful in all different settings, everything from corporate health, annual health checks, to fitness centers where people who are engaged in their health want to monitor not only all of the external muscles, but also one internal muscle, the heart. How is this performing? How is this increasing? And then, as we have also established, researchers are also eyeing the opportunity to, for the first time, include larger cohorts into their studies and including VO2 max there.
Yeah, just to give an idea to the audience, going into, let's say a strength and conditioning environment, an average roster is about 28 athletes for soccer, basketball, lacrosse. I used to go in and do metabolic testing so then I can program the wearables that I'm selling to them and then offer a retest. Each test took about anywhere from 12 to 13 minutes, just the part that the athlete is participating in. And you're always trying to identify a better protocol to reduce that time. And there's protocols out there that you could maybe get a 9-minute assessment in. but they're brutal. They're not, they're physically demanding. And I can't really administer this to grandma, grandpa, or every population set. So, there are challenges in implementing. The ethics also come into play, but also, the data itself being used. Sometimes you don't want to overpromise without delivering. And that's the one big thing that I find is meaningful in being able to standardize something that is efficient with time and being able to then interpret that data and take action or implement it into your practice. So I think home health care, I think just in a simple gym membership and an assessment now instead of doing a traditional step test, there is value. However, I think, 3-minute assessment, bioimpedance assessment, and then identifying what is the goal and programming really encapsulates what the benefit of having some insight that's actionable. How do you work and ensure that older adults and women get an accurate measurement? Because some other things that I'm hearing in podcasts, right, or in literature, is your cohorts broad? Is this, or in your studies? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So one thing that we are very proud of with Seismo Fit is exactly as you present, that we can now include a completely different section of the population. Previously, with the exhaustive physical tests that you have done so many of, anywhere from 12, 13 minutes, you say they're brutal, right? That means they are not for everyone. Whereas Seismo Fit, we are very proud to be democratizing the access to VO2 max. For the first time, VO2 max is now available to people who do not have the physical capability to do a physical VO2 max test. And perhaps it is more relevant for these people to be aware of their VO2 max than a professional athlete. So in that sense, we are really opening up VO2 max to many more people. And when we see VO2 max and its correlation to lifestyle disease, it's very clear, the data, right? Take Peter Rydahl, the American professor. He did a very large study back in 2022 on 750,000 US veterans and stratified them into 6 different categories, from very unfit to extremely fit, and then was monitoring these people on height, weight, age, gender, but also a list of disease, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, cholesterol, so on. His study is available online. I'll also happily send you the study, Marcelo. You can make it available, perhaps in the notes.
That'd be great.
But the table that he presents there is no exception. With each level up in fitness, the risk of any of all the diseases he's monitoring drops. So the evidence is very clear, especially in a cohort so large as 750,000. Coming to our cohorts, we have done 12 peer-reviewed publications now. We have a very good gender balance between men and women in our data sets. We can see that women generally have a VO2 max that is 10 points lower than men's.
And
very
for
likely
women
because
to listen to that, he's not being
are just smaller.
He's not being a chauvinist here. It's the mechanics, right? The structure.
It's the
is
biomechanicals.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean they're less efficient from a training and performance standpoint.
Absolutely not.
So it really, I think you bring up, I think today you brought up, I like the word democratize, because what does the future of assessment look like and what's meaningful to measure? And I think VO2 max has been well established, the mortality and the comorbidities. It's an easy measurement. Clinicians today are finally getting more educated in preventative applications. They've studied it in their medical programs. But I think, being able to now understand the programming behind it and how to not just know what the plumbing is, but know how to actually make it more efficient. Is it a tank issue, or is it the output of the faucet that we want to work on, the cardiac output? So signal pairing and other data points, I think that's where I think I would love to kind of see. I know that, personally, I've always looked at resting heart rate, the continuous data measurements that you collect with wearable data. Is there some research out there that you've done that you've looked at other signals in comparison to VO2 max that have been beneficial to pair your technology with?
Well, obviously, many of our research partners are including Seismo Fit and VO2 max estimations in other studies that they are doing, whether that is healthy aging or cancer studies or diabetes studies. Now they have the opportunity to include it. What is very clear is that VO2 max is a very good initial indicator or biomarker that should be used to a higher. It has a potential to be used in a more preventive case than it has been in the past, because now first of all, it's available. But if you have a person and you test, just say the entire population, right? Then you can do a stratification based on where they are with VO2 max. And all of the ones in the higher echelons of VO2 max, they should just be encouraged to continue, because obviously the way they lead their lives, the choices they make on a daily basis are obviously good, because their VO2 max is good. Their body is sufficiently oxygenized with the blood that is put in circulation by the heart. And then that gives us just for namesake, the bottom half, which can be stratified into different groups. We can focus on those with preventive measures, or also providing additional tests. Yeah. Because very often, this is also what our chief cardiologist says here at VentriJect. He's like, there is no reason to test for high cholesterol if a person has a high VO2 max, because the likelihood of a person with a high VO2 max also having a high cholesterol is very, very small. So we have the opportunity through stratification with Seismo Fit to actually decrease the number of tests being done, and thereby saving a lot of tests, saving resources to then from the needless tests to investing in those in the lower parts, and thereby redistributing some of the resources in our healthcare systems is becoming an option now, since VO2 max has now become so accessible.
Yeah, I think the solution is great, because to your point, it helps. Episodic measurements help in identifying what interventions could take place, and that's been historic, right? You go into a doctor, they take your blood pressure, they take all these metrics, and then if you have a risk during that one measurement, they want to see trends over a period of time. So that's why you want to measure something as effective as VO2, because like we said, it's associated to mortality, but it also could help identify other comorbidities. But as a practitioner, I know that I could impact VO2 max in a couple of ways. I can make the athlete or the individual just lose a couple of pounds, and I just improve their efficiency. Their VO2 max number should increase. The other method is implementing a training or conditioning program. I know I had the opportunity of working with CERD, the group out over in Europe, where they did the largest longitudinal study to date, the Hunt study, and they've looked at VO2 max and how to impact it. And you've heard a lot I think a lot of professionals today are using this protocol 4x4. I think that's been one of the most oldest training tools to use out there. It originally started with football or soccer in the States. That's what we refer to it. But it is a great training tool. It's a great training metric. I know that you've been distributing this more now in the States. and you're looking at home health as a great solution. I think you guys have some good announcements recently. You want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are growing a lot, not least thanks to perhaps also factors outside of our control. That VO2 max is becoming an increasingly interesting biomarker to follow. Take also large voices such as Peter Attia
Yeah.
and the entire longevity movement that is very much talking into VO2 max being an important biomarker to follow, are all events that are happening in our macro arena that is then influencing us, in this case, locally positively influencing us. And we are working with distributors in many countries. Seismo Fit is registered as a medical device in Europe and in South Africa. In the US, we are registered as a wellness device with a path we have chosen prior to obtaining FDA approval to get the ball rolling in the US. I'm very proud to announce that we have just recently concluded a very large contract with a large nationwide provider of health checks in the US. So very soon, many more Americans will have Seismo Fit available through these clinics all across the United States. And this is hopefully only the first in many larger operators seeing the potential in offering VO2 max estimation.
On the health and fitness side, I know you've had some recent live stream events on LinkedIn talking about this through that community as well. So you get the medical spas, you get the premium facilities, in some cases, some small business operators that you've engaged with. What's been the outcome in that side of things? Have you noticed anything unique?
Absolutely. We see the fitness industry to an increasing extent showing interest in including the heart as a muscle, offering their members to track this in order to further solidify with the members the difference that it makes, that they make sure to come to the gym on a regular basis. Because gym owners, they do also know that people who come regularly and uses the gym membership are a lot less likely to churn. So offering VO2 max estimation, and perhaps to a fitness operator, VO2 max develops only gradually. It doesn't change a lot from week to week. It's very slow over a quarter or half a year.
Yeah.
And that means when you offer this as a fitness operator, you hold people in, because it's a biomarker everybody's talking about. So you use it for marketing. But two, when people become aware of the VO2 max and they want to see it increase, they have to be patient and they have to show up regularly in order to change their VO2 max, increase their VO2 max. And that means they get the good habit of coming back regularly. And so they're less likely to churn, and then the gym will be making more money.
Well, it only works if the owner and operator that's hopefully listening is working on training programs, and programming, because equipment, having it is important, but the amenities without training really just become exercise with no outcome, as opposed to having a training stimulus. So I think, the contingency out there needs to understand that we are going to do assessments. I know that national organizations like American College of Sports Medicine, NSCA, ACE, ISSA, all these national bodies here, and some are international as well, have a recommendation of VO2 max assessment. So I look at the good, better, best offering. This is, I think it allows you to cover the whole community, like we've discussed. I know there's reasons to do fitness testing, the traditional testing of maybe doing a intermittent testing protocol for team sports or a ramped effort because they're training for something specific, and need to have the velocity data and understand what they're going to be finishing that race or anything at. But still, it's still representing the same number. And that's where I think it allows us to democratize, allows us to service this community, and allows us to effectively be able to create an engagement, retention, and an ethical revenue opportunity for everyone. So when we're talking about this, and kind of you already kind of alluded to larger announcements that you guys will have, when working with this community and working with this product, bundling it obviously makes the most sense, and understanding your use case makes the most sense. So that outcome is really unique. What have been some of the other roadmap things that you guys are considering in the future that is possibly shareable now as you go forward?
We obviously are most proud of our current offering, the Seismo Fit algorithm that can accurately and estimate VO2 max, and it's validated across studies. We are one limitation that our current algorithm has is that it's developed in healthy individuals with a healthy heart, because the heart is, as we monitor the seismocardiogram, is one component that if there's something interfering with the heart, such as heart disease, then the seismocardiogram is compromised, and that is also likely to compromise the accuracy of our algorithm's predictions. So we are working with the researchers both across Europe and hopefully very soon in the United States to collect data on patients with heart disease and to develop an algorithm that is taking into account heart disease and thereby estimating still accurately these patients. This is something we have been unable to do before. So heart disease is a patient group that we are looking very much forward to in 2026 to be including in what we could say the group where we are considered accurate. Second group is children. Right now, the device is recommended for use from only 18 and above. This is also something that we have scientists and researchers working with us on lowering this to 16 or perhaps even down to 14 in order to catch children earlier, to explain to them, showing them hard facts on where are you headed, especially maybe not so much if they're heading upwards. That's great. It's more to help those that are heading downwards already at a very early stage in life, at an early age.
That's great to hear, because the challenges with we know, right, because of technology and because of inactivity and because the social interaction has changed with the younger generation simply because of obvious things post-COVID, during COVID. Athletics training programs are organized now. They're not as much more about free play because it's just changed, because of, sad things that have happened socially. So I feel like that's great news to hear that you're addressing those two population sets, and it'll be mostly algorithm development as opposed to generating a new hardware piece, right? It's just gathering data. And I think the practitioners and the agencies that listen to this have to understand that they have to be active participants. And I think that's the really cool thing about having an opportunity, right? Having an opportunity of validating my programming, having an opportunity of validating my services is really the thing that we need to do better, and that we need to be able to collect objective data, right? I don't have to necessarily always be present to collect the data. I don't have to have a high-end clinician or a technician do this. I can have someone that I can basically show and tell, and this is how you're going to do it, and here's documentation, I want you to read it, and then you're going to administer this. And as a practitioner or as the coach, I can then read the data and identify who are my population sets that I need to do program A, program B, program C with. And I think that kind of playbook strategy that I alluded to before is really the message that I really wanted to talk to, and emphasize in this talk today, because initially we spoke about, the value of and the buzz that's going on in the industry and talking about those large names that we keep hearing, in the space, and rightfully so, Dr. Peter Rydahl, and all these other larger contributors in that workspace. I feel like also this sensor technology, along with continuous data. So if I looked at duration of exercise time, if I looked at average heart rate, if I looked at max heart rate, and if I looked at algorithms that look at time spent in zones, and there's scoring systems out there like TRIMP scoring and other data sets that allow me to be able to say, I've dosed these athletes, or I've dosed these members, or I've dosed my patient market with the recommended World Health Organization dose, 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous intensity, or 300 minutes of low intensity. So I think now we could understand the dose response better, and I think that's where clinicians are trying to get to. And I think the only way you get to, frankly, is to be able to standardize the workflow. And I think we've done that historically very subjectively sometimes. Standardized testing is not equal to every practitioner. Like, I'm going to get a different experience with a professional coach compared to a just certified personal trainer in a VO2 max measurement. Practice and performance outcomes, that's where the eye of the beholder, or the coach's eye, or the clinician's eye that's been doing it for years, that's where you can differentiate. And that's where I think digital technology is moving into. AI, how's that topic really impacting your product?
Yeah, so not only are our algorithm trained using machine learning, which is a variant of AI, we see many of our users, our clients, which are then they are then servicing and conducting the measurements, as we are merely a data supplier. But we see operators that incorporates VO2 max as a value, combining it, for example, in the gym space, with the gender, age, and personal wish. Like, do I want to bulk up, or group them into about 3 or 4 groups? Do I want to bulk up? Do I want to lose weight? Do I want to increase my athleticism, or do I want to just maintain? And then they draw in a lot, and then they have an AI engine that then some of them suggest personal training programs. Others include also dietary programs for if you want to bulk up or if you want to lose weight. It's 2 different things. But AI here is a very powerful technology, which, when fused with an important biomarker such as VO2 max, is really enriching AI's capability to deliver you personalized suggestions that is able to help you achieve the goals that you have.
So you provide the raw data set.
Yes.
Yeah, that's important for those clinicians and the researchers. But at the same point, if I don't have that ability, but I have the AI tech stack that you're referring to, I can pull that data in, use whatever decision tree that I'm programming, because that's what you identified, taking in all that information, goal setting, all the other demographic data sets, right? And creating that. I think that's really what's amazing during this time, to see what applications and technologies are doing to the space. I wonder, what does the future of health and fitness look like if we didn't have certain occurrences in our timelines? Like, what if we never had this era of, fast food and processed foods? What would the industry look like today? I often kind of have these big picture questions with a lot of my friends, like, what would the industry look like if we didn't do this?
It's almost scary to see what happened to the average weight of the American population back then in the 70s, right? When the curve really broke and it started increasing, right? With how it coincided with the changes in regulations and also the issuance and the proliferation of more processed foods and higher sugar content, right?
Oh yeah, it's been well documented. In certain regards, it's now a big argument occurring, and I think it's rightfully so. But I also think there's been miseducation on genetic modified, the term itself. I also think it's been a little bit misrepresented, and that we're looking at being able to address a lot of these comorbidities, a lot of these problems in the industry with medication and dependent upon medication to create those outcomes. Have you guys looked at the impact of what some of these medications do to the data set, like let's say GLP-1s or other data sets? How does that impact your measurements?
Yeah, absolutely. So one very well documented effect of beta blockers is that beta blockers reduces or lowers the resting heart rate, and the resting heart rate is one thing that our sensor is also recording and uses in the calculation, because there is an inverse correlation between heart rate and VO2 max. That means the lower your resting heart rate, the higher your VO2 max. But if our sensor records an medically induced low resting heart rate, then that is bound to provide a VO2 max that is high. But if you were not medicated, then you wouldn't have such a high VO2 max. So that's one medication. Then we can see several of our clients. We have one that provides VO2 max estimation in correlation with the DEXA scan. And they can see that many of these patients who are on GLP-1, that when they lose weight, then from the DEXA scan, they can see the composition of where that weight loss comes from. And they see it's around 60% fat, 40% muscle mass in those people who do not exercise as part of their GLP-1 protocol.
That's interesting because you're bringing up what I think is the biggest value through everything. Are you there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The biggest thing that I'm seeing is, I'm sorry, I just saw my screen just blacked out on me for anyone that saw me gaff there, but it's nature. Technology is not perfect, but I think the biggest message there is in looking at multiple signals and being able to establish something. And I think the take-home message with all this is, how can I maximize and be more efficient, right? How do I do this and ensure the population that I'm getting an accurate measurement is exactly that, is understanding that what is validated is really an important metric to be able to design in my workflow. So it's a passive measurement that I think we could establish training objectives. We can do retesting cadences, privacy. That's one thing we didn't really talk about here. To kind of what are your compliances to, being, obviously you're probably GDPR, being a medical device in over there, and that's significantly better than some of the standards that we have here. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
I'll be happy to. Correct. Being a European company based out of Copenhagen, Denmark, we are, of course, necessitated to comply with GDPR regulations, and where we are to document how we handle data and especially sensitive personal data. For that reason, we have opted to not capture any personal identifiable data. In our app, the only thing that is inserted into the app is height, weight, age, and gender. But there is no name, there's no address, there's no telephone number, there's no social security number. So there is no way to link this one result with any one individual. If anybody was to access my VO2 max estimate, they would get a 40-year-old male with this weight and this height has this VO2 max. I was like, okay, but that doesn't say anything. It's only that result is only linked to the person through the one who administers the Seismo Fit test. And our app is built so that once you've done the test, you have the result on screen. I have here Marcelo's result. His VO2 max is 45. You press the PDF button. Immediately, I, as the administrator of the test, receives the PDF saying value of 45. And then I can forward that to your email, and then you can store it. I can store it in your patient journal, or you can store it with you. And then that is how we then link the results. But the app itself does not make any linkages. And that's how we achieve a very high data security.
So basically asking questions, doing this whole workflow, 10 minutes or less, I'm administering a service. I think that's really the value point that I think we need to be able to do. And also from a practitioner standpoint in implementing this, we could add more value. But to your point, it's protected. It's anonymized if I'm going to be doing research, right? And all I care about is that demographic information, because that's what I'm looking at. Looking at the population set. I'm looking at that information, gender breakdown, and then being able to use the mathematics or my whatever method, Bayesian method, whatever statistical method I'm going to apply. That's really, I think, the value here that I hope most people got out of this is from the first talk, we kind of talked about the importance of measuring and the news of having now newer technology. But now in this second talk, we've kind of talked about how it's being adopted more, it's being used more. There's been more stories, more successes that you guys have had. And now on the cusp of finishing this year with more active medical practitioners using this in this space, particularly around the clinical space, home health care, as well as the fitness space. I think that anyone that hears this, what I'll do is in our notes, I'll make sure to not only include that research article that you brought up before, but also to provide contact information so we can then, if you're interested in implementing a demo here in the US, I'll make sure to be able to contact you and help you out in that process. But at the same time, be able to give you access to Peter and have the organization contact you as well in regards to being able to use this technology in your business if you're interested. But I'm really happy to have this second time around and see how the progress has gone. And, I'm really excited to see how the initial pilot has gone to establishing now a workflow and looking at that playbook and a practitioner. That's something that I feel I've committed my mission to, is to be able to give people that opportunity on the business side. And that's really what we're about here at BioInsights. But I've really enjoyed our conversation today. I want to thank you again for taking the time out and really, really enjoyed this with you today.
Likewise. Thanks, Marcelo, for inviting me back. And we're always happy to share more of our insights around VO2 max. We are increasing our visits to the US, planning a trip to Houston, Texas, and meeting a lot of people already down there as part of a trade delegation. We went to the ACSM National Conference in this year in 2025 in Atlanta, and are looking already now to attending several conferences also across the United States in 2026. Be sure to reach out if you want to learn more or want to meet with us. Then let's see if we can connect either online or perhaps during one of our visits in the US.
I encourage everyone. I'll make sure to share in our threads and in our communication that. And again, thanks again. Take care.
Take care. Bye.